There are two kinds of people in this world: those who are moved like chess pieces, and those who move them. History has never once rewarded innocence. Power is not something you are handed. It is taken. It is engineered. It is built quietly, through strategy, through human psychology, and sometimes through methods that make comfortable people deeply uncomfortable. Robert Greene's book, The 48 Laws of Power, is one of the most controversial books ever written. Libraries have debated banning it. Executives have devoured it in secret. Inmates in American prisons have studied it more than almost any other book on earth. Why? Because it does not preach. It does not moralize. It simply tells you how the world actually operates, underneath the polite surface of things. Today we are going through every single one of the 48 laws. All of them. Not skimmed, not summarized into neat little motivational quotes, but actually decoded, with real historical examples that show you why these laws work. If you stay until the end, you will understand human nature at a level most people never reach in a lifetime. And more importantly, you will never be the pawn again. Let us begin in 17th century France, at the most spectacular party in history. Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister to King Louis XIV, wanted to impress his king. So he threw a party at his personal chateau. Fireworks, fine food, thousands of guests, the most magnificent event France had ever seen. He genuinely believed this display of wealth and taste would earn him favor. The next morning, Louis XIV had him arrested. Fouquet spent the rest of his life in a prison cell. Law 1. Never outshine the master. The people above you, your boss, your patron, your investor, must always feel superior. Show your talent, absolutely. But the moment they begin to feel overshadowed, insecure, or threatened, you become a liability. Make them feel brilliant, and you will be protected. Make them feel small, and you will be removed. This is not pessimism. This is how power structures have worked throughout all of recorded history. The rest of the foundational laws build on this core insight. Law 2 tells you to be cautious about trusting friends too deeply. Friendship is layered with emotion, jealousy, and assumptions. A former enemy whom you forgive will often work twice as hard to prove their loyalty, because they have something to prove. Your closest friend assumes you owe them everything. Law 3 is about concealing your intentions. Otto von Bismarck built modern Germany not through declarations, but through strategic opacity. When people cannot read your next move, they cannot block it. Law 4 says to say less than necessary. Louis XIV terrified his courtiers not with threats, but with silence. Words reveal you. Silence forces others to guess. And guessing makes people anxious. And anxious people make mistakes. Law 5 treats your reputation as your most valuable asset. It can take decades to build, and one careless moment to destroy. Protect it with the same ferocity you would protect your life. Law 6 insists on commanding attention. Thomas Edison understood something Nikola Tesla did not. Genius alone is invisible. The person who captures public imagination wins, even if they are not the most technically gifted in the room. Tesla may have been the better scientist. Edison became a legend. Law 7 is pragmatic and unsentimental. Let others do the work, but ensure the credit is yours. Law 8 says, do not go to people, make people come to you. When you control the location, the terms, and the pace of any interaction, you control the outcome. Law 9 is perhaps the cleanest of the early laws. Win through your actions, not your arguments. Debate exhausts people. Results silence them. For 10 years, the Greek army could not breach the walls of Troy. Then they stopped trying. They built a massive wooden horse, left it on the beach as a gift, and sailed away as if defeated. The Trojans celebrated their victory, dragged the horse inside the gates, and that night, soldiers hidden inside it opened the city from within. Law 12. Use selective honesty to disarm your target. One genuine act of openness or generosity can dissolve years of suspicion. It is not manipulation in the crude sense. It is understanding that people lower their guard when they feel they have received something real. The Trojan horse was not just a military strategy. It was a psychological one. Law 15 follows a harder principle. Crush your enemy completely. When Rome finally defeated Carthage, their great rival, they did not simply claim victory. They burned the city to the ground, salted the earth, and erased Carthage from the map. Brutal, yes, but the lesson is clear. A wounded enemy does not forget. Mercy left unearned becomes a future threat. The remaining laws of this chapter form a protective intelligence. Law 10 warns you away from the chronically miserable. Suffering, bitterness, and bad luck are contagious in social ecosystems. People who are perpetually unfortunate often unconsciously drag others down with them. Law 11 builds your strategic security. Make others depend on you. When people need you, they protect you. Law 13 says, when you need a favor, appeal to someone's interests, not their compassion. People respond to what benefits them far more reliably than they respond to your need. Law 14 advises you to act like a friend while thinking like an intelligence officer. The most valuable information is gathered through casual conversation, not interrogation. Law 16 is one of the most powerful. Create value through absence. When you are always available, always present, always responsive, you become ordinary. Strategic withdrawal makes people remember why they value you. Law 17 says stay unpredictable. The moment someone can model your behavior, they can outmaneuver you. Consistency is a form of vulnerability. Law 18 cautions against isolation. Building walls around yourself might feel safe, but it cuts you off from information, alliances, and opportunities. Power lives in connection, not in fortresses. Law 19 is a warning rooted in common sense. Know who you are dealing with before you engage. Stalin's political opponents did not merely lose their careers, they disappeared. Picking the wrong battle against the wrong person is not bravery, it is waste. Charles Manson never personally committed the murders his followers carried out. He never needed to. He had done something far more powerful. He had replaced the logic in people's heads with a story. He gave them identity. He gave them belongings. He gave them a mission. He made himself the center of their emotional universe. And that is exactly why Law 27 is perhaps the most chilling in the entire book. Play on people's need to believe, and you can create a following that will do almost anything. Human beings are not primarily rational. We are primarily emotional, and we use reason to justify what we already feel. The person who understands this and directs it ethically becomes a leader. The person who understands this without conscience becomes something far more dangerous. The surrounding laws in this chapter complete a portrait of the master strategist. Law 20 says, never fully commit to any single side in a conflict. Stay neutral where you can. Let others fight, while you position yourself as the indispensable third party. Law 21 is one of the most counterintuitive. Play dumb. When people believe they are the smartest in the room, they relax and reveal themselves. Intelligence, worn visibly, makes people defensive. Law 22 says that when you are genuinely outmatched, surrender strategically. You buy time. You lower the opponent's guard, and you live to rebuild. Law 23 demands concentration of force. In business, in relationships, in creative work, scattered effort produces scattered results. Focus is power. Law 24 is about playing the social game with elegance. Flattery, handled clumsily, is obvious and insulting. Handled with grace, it is disarming. Law 25 is personal and profound. Recreate yourself. Do not let your background, your upbringing, or other people's expectations write your identity. Choose who you are becoming, and build that person deliberately. Law 26 is cold but practical. Keep your hands clean. When difficult or controversial things must be done, ensure someone else is formally responsible. History judges those whose names are on the deed. Law 28 says, enter every venture with boldness. Hesitation signals weakness. People feel confidence before they analyze competence. Law 29 demands that you plan to the very end. Most people plan for their next move. The strategist plans for the final outcome and works backwards. Law 30 is about the aesthetics of achievement. Make success look effortless. When people see you struggle, they see your limitations. When success looks natural, it looks inevitable. When J. Edgar Hoover wanted to dismantle Al Capone's criminal empire, he did not attempt to arrest every gangster in Chicago. He focused entirely on one man. Get Capone, and the entire structure collapses. Law 42. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. Every organization, every movement, every gang derives its power from a central node. Remove that node, and what remains is directionless. This is not merely a principle of war. It is a principle of organizational psychology, and understanding it protects you as much as it arms you. The laws of this chapter are about narrative control, how power is maintained not just through force, but through perception. Law 31 says give people options, but only options you have designed. The illusion of choice is one of the most powerful control mechanisms in existence. Law 32 says to appeal to people's fantasies. Reality is often disappointing. The person who can paint a compelling vision of what could be holds enormous influence over people who are dissatisfied with what is. Law 33 says, find every person's weak point, their particular fear or particular desire. Everyone has one. It is the lever that, when moved, moves everything else. Law 34 is essentially this. Behave like someone worthy of respect, and you will receive it. The world takes you largely at your own estimation. Law 35 says, learn to wait. Timing transforms the same action from disaster to triumph. Impatience is one of the most reliable paths to failure. Law 36 is elegant in its simplicity. What you cannot have, ignore. Desperation makes you controllable. Indifference makes you powerful. Law 37 says, create spectacles. Human attention is won through the visual and the dramatic, not through logic and footnotes. Law 38 advises you to think independently, but behave conventionally enough to avoid becoming a target. Being visibly different invites attack. Save your individuality for what matters. Law 39 says, stir the waters when it serves you. An angry opponent is a sloppy opponent. Provoke carefully and let their reaction become their undoing. Law 40 says, never trust the free lunch. Everything that appears to cost nothing has a hidden price, in obligation, in dependency, or in your own self-respect. Law 41 warns against stepping into a great person's shadow. If you follow a legend in the same role, in the same institution, you will always be compared unfavorably. Build your own territory. Bruce Lee once said something that sounds simple until you really sit with it. Be like water. Water has no fixed form. Pour it into a cup and it becomes the cup. Freeze it and it becomes a weapon. Release it and it becomes a force that erodes mountains. You cannot hold it. You cannot cut it. You cannot predict it. Law 48. Assume formlessness. The person who commits rigidly to one strategy, one identity, one method, becomes predictable. And predictable things can be anticipated, countered, and destroyed. The world does not stop changing because you have decided on a plan. The strategist must be fluid, adaptive, and impossible to pin down. The final laws sharpen this endgame. Law 43 says, do not simply rule through fear. Fear produces compliance, but generates resentment. Win people's minds and hearts, and you generate loyalty that persists even when you are not watching. Law 44 is the mirror effect, reflecting people on themselves. Do what they do. It unsettles them, confuses their aggression, and often forces them to confront the absurdity of their own behavior. Law 45 says, advocate for change gradually. Radical disruption frightens people, even when it would benefit them. Move incrementally, and the transformation becomes invisible until it is irreversible. Law 46 says, do not project perfection. People are drawn to excellence, but threatened by flawlessness. A person who seems too perfect becomes a target for envy, and envy, left to fester, turns friends into quiet enemies. Law 47 says, know when to stop. Victory has a natural conclusion. The leaders who have destroyed their own legacies throughout history are rarely the ones who failed to win. They are the ones who could not stop after winning. Success makes people reckless. Discipline means knowing when the game is over. These 48 laws are not a moral system. They do not tell you what is right or wrong. What they tell you is how power actually functions. In offices, in families, in governments, in relationships, in history, in the street. Whether you choose to use any of these laws actively is entirely your decision. But not knowing them has its own cost. The world is full of people who understand these dynamics perfectly well. If you don't, you are not standing outside the game. You are simply losing it without realizing you were ever a player. So, which of the 48 laws surprised you the most? Which one did you recognize from your own life? Drop it in the comments below. If this gave you something to think about, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a psychology masterclass. Power is a game. Now you know how it's played. Stay sharp and master the game.